Hey, what is up, everybody? Hey, Mario Armstrong. I am humbled. This is good stuff. It is Dr. Vibe and the Sports Vibe with Brendan Whithead. Mario, if you want to come in and join us, we're going to be talking a little bit about what went on in the NFL, NCAA. This is a regular show that we do, especially during the fall and winter time, talking about what's going on in sports. I'm joined by Brendan Whithead. And hey, thank you, Mario. Hi, come in and join us if you want to talk some football, even for a bit. I know you're a busy guy. Hey, much thanks. Hey, Mario, and I'm interrupting our show, but I joined your Facebook group the other day, so I'm looking forward to it. Let's introduce Brendan. What is up, Brendan? How you doing?
Nothing much, man. I was enjoying last week. It was kind of like the full immersion. You had the college football and you had the pro. So, I mean, my whole weekend was absolutely set. I was really, really enjoying it. There's a lot of good games on, man.
All right. Well, you know what? Tell people a little about yourself before we get started.
Yeah, I'm just a sports media personality. I do some freelance journalism in the sports. I've had pieces published in the Ebony Online, as well as Very Smart Brothers. In addition to, I was a co-editor of catcrave.com, which was under the fan side of Umbrella last year. In addition to that, I have a podcast titled He's the Producer, I'm the Host that I host, as well as a weekly radio show in the Raleigh area. You can catch it on 99.3, 96.5, or 6:20 a.m. That's 9 to 11 Eastern on Saturday mornings. Or if you're abroad somewhere, you can catch it at www.thesportshopradio.com and click listen. That's 9 to 11 Eastern time every Saturday morning.
All right. Well, let's get to it. What were some of the games that caught you college-wise on the weekend? I guess let's start off with that Oregon-Michigan State game.
Yeah, that was a really, really nice game. I thought that Oregon was going to pull it out. Mark Helfrich, the coach over at Oregon, had been so good against the top 25, 7-2 in his previous 9 games before that. Michigan State, you know, sometimes when you see the Pac-12 teams or you see Big Ten teams, historically, when you've seen them go against the other really big-time programs, you wonder about their ability to score and keep up in those high-scoring games, especially if they have the kind of skill position talent that they need to. They've kind of been historically known, or at least recently, as, hey, they're really good up front. They're going to have a really good offensive line. They have a really good defensive line, but their wide receivers or their running backs aren't going to be that next tier, that next level. Well, you've seen Ohio State really change the mold lately with Urban Meyer, and he's brought in some new recruits. And Michigan State, to their credit, has continuously improved. Didn't have that dramatic improvement like Ohio State, but they've continuously improved. And Connor Cook has looked every bit the kind of Heisman Trophy candidate that he was built up to be. He could have gone to the pros last year, didn't. And he's a guy that you look for not only to not hurt you, but to win you games. And that's what they went out and they did. Oregon still has – I still sometimes – I look at them and still think that they have some issues up front. Michigan State, once again, didn't allow a sack the second week in a row that Connor Cook has stayed upright. I don't know if Oregon is defensively strong enough to compete at the highest level, but, you know, in a shootout type of situation, which is what that kind of turned into, I'm surprised Oregon wasn't able to pull it out. But kudos to Michigan State, and the Big Ten might just be the strongest conference we have this year.
Absolutely. I also thought that, I guess, 2 things. I think, first of all, if the game was at Oregon, I think Oregon may have won because I think the home field was huge. And it's really huge in college, especially Big Ten, Pac-10. I think another thing, too, I think that Oregon's quarterback, watch him because by the end of the season, he's going to be dangerous. He's still really getting used to the program because he transferred from another school. And he's still getting it. And that was his first really, really big game.
I'm glad you brought up Vernon Adams, formerly of Eastern Washington, transferred, like you mentioned. And, well, actually, technically, he graduated. And with that graduate loophole rule that they have in the NCAA, because Oregon offers a program that other schools don't, he was able to he finished up in 3 years and was able to move on to Oregon to have a graduate degree and to pursue his graduate degree. And to have a year of eligibility left. He fractured his finger. It came out later that he fractured his finger. And so but like you said, I think maybe even more important than the injury, he's still learning that playbook. Oregon's, this is something that, hey, he had to finish up at his last school, and then he's really just rushing. I think he's had about 25 or 30 days of real time to try to digest that entire playbook. Michigan State, that win, like you said, that win might end up actually looking a lot better later on in the year because you do have 4 teams that are now eligible for that Final Four play-in, or however you want to describe it, it's come to a point now where early losses don't necessarily knock you out. It used to be if you had an early loss, more than likely in the old BCS kind of ways of doing it, that was going to be it. You weren't going to have another opportunity. But now you've got a committee, you got the Pac-12, which is going to be really good this year. So Oregon can still stack up some quality wins, and losing to Michigan State is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. These two teams could theoretically meet again later on in the year.
I think we may see that. I think that this was definitely an important game for both teams, and I think they showed very well. And because the margin was so close, I think it benefits both teams.
Absolutely. And it's nice to have games like this early on. I know growing up, a lot of times I'd watch a lot of the early college football, and because it wasn't intra-conference play, a lot of these teams had the kind of their pseudo preseason where they'd schedule a ton of cupcakes, and it wasn't really that competitive and it wasn't a lot of fun to watch. That's not really the case anymore, and I think you'll start to see teams more and more because it has expanded to 4 teams, and later on when it expands to 8, they're going to try to increase that strength of schedule, and so you'll see better games earlier on, and I think that's what you're seeing now.
Any other games? I have some I can throw out there, but definitely, what other games, if any, caught your eye?
Well, Toledo over Arkansas. Arkansas was number 18th team in the nation, and Toledo was really surprising. Now, it was a surprise to a lot of people, surprised myself as well. But Coach Matt Campbell over there at Toledo has really been making a lot of big waves. He was kind of amongst the coaching circle. A lot of those guys were kind of looking at him and knowing, hey, this guy is one of those guys on the rise type of situation. They played Missouri tough the last 2 times that they played. They played Florida really tough couple years ago. While this is a surprise, I mean, there's no way you can get around the fact Toledo beating Arkansas is a surprise. To those in the know, they're perhaps a little bit less shocked because a lot of people have been looking at Campbell for a while as one of those new up-and-coming coaches that you want to keep your eye on.
Nice. One of the games that caught my surprise, because they have such a large following anyways, is the Notre Dame game.
Yes. How
they came back against Virginia, but their starting quarterback is out with a fractured ankle for the rest of the year. Thought it was gallant effort for them to come back, but looks like their hopes may have just gone after like 1 or 2 games.
Yeah, and it's really been a series of maladies for them. They had an injury on the defensive line before the season even started. You mentioned Malik Zaire goes down with an ankle injury. Their tight end goes down. Their starting running back goes down. This is going to be a completely different team when they suit up and play for week 3 as opposed to when they were coming into this season. The backup quarterback, whose name escapes me at the moment, but the fact that he was able to come in, settle himself, and throw the game-winning touchdown, it was pretty exciting. I mean, it was absolutely college football at its finest, and you really appreciate that. But moving forward for Notre Dame, I mean, they have a lot of talent, and that was one of the things that they were deep at a lot of positions. But you can't expect a team to lose as much as they have in as short a period of time as they have, and really challenge for anything in terms of a national championship, which is the conversation that they have been in pretty much all year.
Absolutely. It seems that other teams are just doing good. I see Auburn just squeaked by.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll talk about this a little bit more because that's one of the games that I've pegged for watching this weekend. But Jeremy Johnson, the quarterback, came in with all the hype in the world. I mean, you heard the Cam Newton comparisons. There was a lot of Heisman talk around him just because he's athletic, he has an arm, and so physically, or if you're going by resume, he's got all the things that you want to look for. But then when you see him perform, it's always a bit of a letdown. I mean, this wasn't just the tons of turnovers versus Jacksonville State was bad, but he had a similarly poorly played game last week. Now the guys around him were able to make him look better. That defense is still stout, but man, it's disappointing that after all the kind of the hype and the hoopla, that this is kind of what you're getting out of them, and I don't know if this is. I don't know what to do with this. I was watching ESPN College Game Day, and Joey Galloway was pretty much surmised it the best he could. He's like, I don't know how you coach don't throw into double and triple coverage. Like, these are poor decisions. These aren't bad passes. This is not poorly executed passes. This is, I don't understand from the quarterback position. It's indicating I don't understand what I'm looking at when I look at the defense. I don't know what what areas I should be going to and shouldn't be going to. And really, this is not something that you can kind of teach or do ad hoc or on the fly in the middle of a season. I don't know what to expect out of him from week to week, because as much as ballyhooed as he was coming into the season, the last 2 weeks have been really poor showings for him.
Yeah, I think he's thrown more interceptions than touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken,
which has been rough.
Not a good sign. And I don't know if we're going to get to it next or in there. They've got a very big game coming up, if I'm not mistaken, on Saturday.
Yeah, they're playing LSU. I mean, it's Baton Rouge. I mean, it's Death Valley. I mean, that's as big as it gets in the SEC. And so I can't. I've looked at the LSU and for LSU's credit, they haven't been that traditional LSU team. Sure, they have the running talent. Everybody knows Jimmy Fredette is a Heisman Trophy candidate watch kind of guy. They have the DBs. This is DBU now, and so they're going to continue to put out that kind of talent in the secondary. Well, Brandon Harris as a quarterback looks to be a lot more confident than they had in recent years. A lot of times it's been, hey, as long as the quarterback doesn't hurt us, we have an opportunity to win because of our defense and our run game. Now it looks like, hey, this guy might be able to actually do something, might be able to move the chains when the running game isn't working. It makes you look at LSU a little bit differently. Historically, I've kind of looked at them as, if everybody else falls off, maybe LSU has an opportunity. But with a more talented quarterback situation, they could be really, really interesting. I'm hoping that LSU does a little something. I spent a little time in Louisiana, so I started pulling for the Baton Rouge folks a little bit, and I hope that it continues with the Tigers this Saturday.
Absolutely. Any other games from last week that you want to give any comments or takes on?
Well, not necessarily a game, but there was some news that broke today about the Texas AD Steve Patterson. He's he's gone after only 22 months, and it's scary because he just made two big hires. Shaka Smart at the head coaching for the basketball, and of course Charlie Strong being the first black head coach in University of Texas history. When it initially happened, it was a little scary because Texas has struggled. I mean, Texas got blown out versus Notre Dame. They struggled a bit versus Rice in their second game. And so the first thing I thought was, oh, man, this is the precursor to getting really Charlie Strong. But as you found out more stuff about the kind of the things that surrounded Patterson, it seemed like this was less of an indictment of any one particular hire that he made, be it Shaka or Charlie Strong, but it was more about the environment that he engendered over there at Texas. Apparently he wasn't, wasn't very personable with the boosters. He had increased ticket prices significantly since his reign was there. And I know these are kind of smaller things, but when you combine it with the other culture of being mediocre or disappointing, especially in football, people put up with some stuff. They're not going to put up with losing and a bad attitude. And that kind of seemed to be what caught up with him. 22 months. And especially if you look 22 months in for a guy that, went there for undergrad, went there for law school, they really wanted to get him out of there. And they absolutely did. Good stuff. Well, what games are you looking to watch this weekend? I know you mentioned LSU and Auburn. I think that's a big game. That's definitely the biggest. Last week featured I think 3 or 4 top 25 matchups between two teams in the top 25. This week, if I'm not mistaken, there's 2. The other one is Georgia Tech versus Notre Dame. Being an ACC guy, it's pretty big. Huge. Now it would have been better, if they're looking. I was looking forward to this game when the schedules were first announced, because this game was a lot more kind of tantalizing before all the Notre Dame injuries. I expect Georgia Tech to win, even though it is in South Bend, Indiana. Georgia Tech, to its credit, I talked about LSU previously being, they're going to run the ball and just hope that their quarterback doesn't hurt them at any point. Well, now they've kind of gotten to the situation where they have a quarterback that they feel comfortable throwing the ball. Remember, Georgia Tech runs that triple option, and really that's one of the things we talked about it in a couple weeks ago. That's one of the things that teams have a hard time playing against, because not only do they run it so very well, and that's really the only team at this kind of upper echelon talent level that runs that. Well, now this year they've added a quarterback that they feel comfortable with, that, if Georgia Tech falls behind, they feel comfortable throwing the ball, which is something they haven't been able to do I mean, Reggie Ball, I guess, in the last few years that they feel comfortable being able to just hand the ball off to the quarterback and saying, hey, go win us this game or go get us back in this game. It'll be interesting to see if Georgia Tech wins the game that it's supposed to now. You know, no longer is Georgia Tech going to be kind of this cute, fun little story like, hey, you beat Notre Dame and you keep rolling along, hey, you're going to really legitimately be in this conversation for the Final Four. And it's really early in the season. That's a lot of pressure for a team that's not accustomed to it. So all of that is going to be in play when they play Notre Dame this weekend.
Yeah, that is going to be a huge game. And I remember watching Georgia Tech last year against Florida State. And they gave Florida State more than they could handle.
Absolutely. Gave them everything that they wanted. But those are the games that they're going to have to win this year if they expect to be in that championship conversation.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, there's also another big game actually Saturday night on, I won't say the network. We don't plug networks. USC and Stanford.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed, and I failed to mention them mostly because I'm just disappointed what I've seen from Stanford. I wasn't blown away by what they put out on the field on the first week. I know that they've been good and they've just been solid. They've been at this very more conservative kind of game plan. They're not going to hurt themselves. They're not going to turn the ball over. But I think you can only win so much doing that. And Kevin Hogan, coming into the season as the winningest quarterback in college football, I've been a little disappointed. I mean, he's had his moments where you see the talent and you see why people are big on him, but he also has a lot of mediocre to poor throws where you're just kind of wondering, like, I don't know if this is the guy that is supposed to lead this team and make this team so much better than, all the other Pac-12 is loaded this year, and mediocre just isn't going to cut it at the quarterback position. I like David Shaw a lot. I think he's a really good coach. I just don't necessarily know if he's got the horses to win this year.
Well, I think too, this is going to be a statement game for USC.
Absolutely.
This is a state like this. This is like almost in a way their Super Bowl.
Yes.
Next to playing with Notre Dame, and it's a huge national game. They rolled up the points last week against whoever they're playing. This is going to be their first big game, and it's going to be a defining game for Steve Sarkisian too.
Absolutely. Look, he has a little bit of travails this offseason. And I talked about it with Texas. They might put up with some off the field stuff, or they might put up with some stuff, but winning is, of course, paramount. You can't come out and embarrass the team, in preseason and then have these letdown games. They got this game, they got UCLA. They're going to have a lot of tough games this year. And USC's got to be able to man up and finish these games off. I think that they're better this year than they have been, mostly just because you're getting further and further away from those NCAA issues that they had where they cut down sanctions, where they cut down the scholarships. So now you got that depth of talent that they haven't had in a little bit. I also really like Cody Kessler. He's a guy that had his opportunity to go to the league last year, decided against it, and you see that talent when he takes the field. I'm pretty excited about USC's future, and I think that they're going to roll versus Stanford, to be completely honest.
Wow. Well, it's a long history, but no Jim Harbaugh anymore, so no animosity. Well, let's flip it over. Your league was kicking last weekend,
yes.
Starting from the Thursday night with the Patriots and the Steelers right till last night. So what are some of your comments and takes from last weekend?
Well, I'm just going to give you some of the bigger surprises. There's a lot of good games, and I gorged myself on as many of them as I could, but I'll stick to some of the surprises that I had. The Bills over the Colts. That line wasn't too big. It was 1 or 2 points either way, depending on who you were looking at. But that game was never close. They were up 17-0 at the end of halftime. At halftime, and they finished 27-14. That game was never really close. Andrew Luck didn't have a particularly good game. That Buffalo Bills defense was as advertised. They got a lot of really good guys. Marcel Darius, Mario Williams, Manny Lawson. There's a lot of really good talent on that side. But the thing that people had been wondering about was, okay, this guy that was the third quarterback at the start of the preseason, Tyrod Taylor, is he going to be able to come in and really make that kind of significant difference, not just be a zero at the quarterback, but make a positive difference for them? And he absolutely did. An absolutely beautiful 50-yard bomb to Percy Harvin kind of was indicative of what he brings to the table, that he was able to move finds his read. You know, everybody talks about his ability to move the pocket or extend the play, but that was just a straight up traditional quarterback finding a guy and beating him on an outside shoulder on a go route to the end zone, something that's been missing out from that team for a long time, because there's a lot of really, really good talent on that team, whether it's Charles Clay at the tight end, who very rarely gets brought up, Robert Woods, Sammy Watkins, or Percy Harvin, and of course LaShawn McCoy will be back in effect when he gets healthy as well. That defense looks good. The offense is extremely talented. Everyone was looking at Tyrod Taylor to see how he would do, and he responded really well. I think he started something like 13 to 15 from the field. Really, really good. You know, it's the trendy pick. The Buffalo Bills are the trendy pick, so that one's going to be a lot of fun to watch. If they can win in an AFC East, that is pretty tough. I mean, every single one of those teams won in week one, so keep an eye on them. Let me see. Another team that I really, really liked, the Titans over the Buccaneers, and that was the game of the two.
Okay, but you know that didn't really surprise me that much, because Tampa Bay's offensive line is not good.
I was a little surprised by how not good it was, though. I mean, I didn't think that, you know, if either team had won, I wouldn't have been shocked. But the drubbing, that 42-14, that was surprising.
Yeah. The size of the victory, and Jameis Winston, and I find it ironic stat, he's the last quarterback to be intercepted on their first NFL pass was Brett Favre. Why is it Bart Starr? I get mixed up. Brett Favre, right? But the thing is, a lot of people compare Jameis Winston to Brett Favre because they're both gunslingers. They just go at it. They don't care what people think. They're just going to keep on going at it. So I found it very ironic. You saw that stat pull up on the screen when you saw that interception. I don't know. Mariota, I think he had a really good game, but this is a journey, not a race. Right. So we will see.
Right. That's going to be something. I couldn't agree more. This is going to be something to keep tabs on. I don't think that Mariota is going to come out and, you know, throw 4 touchdowns every single week. I don't think Winston is going to be as bad. I think that people expected more out of the Buccaneers generally because you looked at some of the weapons that they had. The people like Doug Martin, he's at least shown flashes that he's able to play big time football in this league. Obviously, Mike Evans and Vincent Jackson, and then Austin Seferian-Jenkins, who actually ended up catching the 2 touchdowns. So there, you look at the tight ends, the wide receivers, the running back, you see the skill position. But I think sometimes, you know, being fans of the game, we get caught up into the, you know, the fantasy guys. Like, oh man, this why these skill position guys are really good. But that offensive line, as you said, there started 2 or 3 rookies on that offensive line, a completely new unit playing together. It's going to take a while before they kind of get all on the same accord.
Absolutely. What other games caught your eye?
The Broncos and the Ravens.
We got to talk about that game.
Yeah, you know, it wasn't a surprise. You know, it couldn't be a shocker either way if the Broncos won, the Ravens won. These are kind of the guys that the teams that people are looking at in the AFC. I think it was surprising that the Broncos were able to win without Peyton Manning playing particularly well. You know, he was 24-40. 175 yards, an interception, and no touchdowns. You know, he's only done that 29 times, not thrown a touchdown pass 29 times in his entire career. Surprisingly, 17 of 29 in those games, wins to losses. But I don't know if this is indicative of Peyton Manning. Every time I watch him play, I feel like, or recently, every time I watched him play, I felt like this was going to be his last year playing because he just doesn't look like the same guy. And I understand, hey, you know, he was hurt last year. I get it, but he's old. You know, if you're an older football player, you're going to get hurt more frequently. It's not, you know, there's no old timers league in football. I say it pretty frequently, but that it's true. And so I do wonder exactly how they're going to do this. I know that they have a new system with Kubiak and that they're going to run the ball more often. And you saw that versus Baltimore. They were a little bit fortunate. You know, you never want to be happy that somebody gets hurt, but Suggs goes down with an Achilles injury. So
yeah, that's bad.
You know what's weird? We never really sometimes in NBA, we talk about the Western Conference being so much stronger than the Eastern Conference. When I think of AFC and the NFC, there's a lot of different teams in the NFC, I think, I question like, this team could be good. This team could be. In the AFC, you really kind of just hear the same teams and have for the last few years. If it's Denver, if it's Baltimore, if it's the Patriots, maybe the Steelers, and that's pretty much the extent of a lot of the AFC conversations. With the Broncos going down, the Steelers looking really just completely out of it in the first game. You do wonder who's going to step up and who's going to take those roles. That's kind of like the top tier AFC teams now.
Well, it's interesting. I was watching a bit of that Denver game, and I'm going, Denver's defense?
Yes.
DeMarcus Ware? He played out of his mind that game. Like, I had heard reports on how fast that defense is.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like, I'm just going, and with Peyton Manning, yeah, I can't see him playing more than one this year. I really can't see it. I just saw some of the passes weren't getting there, and I just think that the surprising thing is Tom Brady's only 2 years younger than him.
It doesn't seem like it, right?
It's like 20. There's like a 20-year difference, not a 2-year difference.
And it's because we've known Peyton Manning for so long. Think about this was a guy that people had talked about a long time. He's the son of a famous Archie Manning. Goes into Tennessee, gets the starting job early. Is their starter 4 years. I mean, is on the map the entire time. Heisman Trophy candidate, and then he goes as the number one pick so he's been in the national spotlight for so very long. I think that you juxtapose that with Tom Brady, who you kind of remember at Michigan. He was the starter, but then he wasn't. Then Drew Henson took his role a little bit, and then he gets drafted super late. I think end of the 6th, early 7th round, and then he goes in and he is kind of a Cinderella story how he becomes a quarterback. He's like, oh, well, Drew Bledsoe goes down. Now all of a sudden we got to meet this guy, Tom Brady. No one knows who he is. And all of a sudden they're champions. So I think that the kind of the way that they became national in the national spotlight is the reason that we view Peyton Manning as so much older, just because we feel like we've known him for so much longer.
Absolutely. Any other games?
The 49ers over the Vikings. That was really, and that was the second Monday night game. And just the way that they won. I mean, everything about that game was really weird. Teddy Bridgewater, I hadn't seen him look that bad in quite some time, to be completely honest with you. I was really, really disappointed. I thought Minnesota was going to be one of those teams that challenged. And look, obviously this is week one, so I'm going to try not to be the total fan and completely overreact. But just the way he looked really, really uncomfortable, that was a complete surprise to me, especially with you're getting back arguably the best running back in the game. And so he looked just out of it. I mean, they come out, they have that really, really good field position on their first drive. They start off at the 30 or whatever it is, and they go 3 straight passes and get absolutely nothing out of it. Adrian Peterson, 10 carries for about 30 yards.
Now what was that? That to me was the weirdest part of the game.
That was really weird. Now, I will say that he's historically not done well against the 49ers. And I know that a lot of people point to, hey, Jim Harbaugh's not there anymore. Why is he still struggling? Well, the guy that was the defensive line coach, Tom Sula, is now the head coach over there. So, again, maybe it's time to, you got to temper some of that. Like, maybe maybe this is just a team that he struggles against, and that could be very real. In addition to the fact that the Vikings lost their starting center. I think the week before the season started, he's going to be out for about 8 weeks. So that, that does matter about getting the push against that opposition's defensive front. But yeah, that was really, really weird. You did get a chance to see Adrian Peterson in the passing game a little bit more. If you want to take it for a silver lining out of that, he looked pretty good catching passes and finishing those. But it was bizarre all the way around. It was really, really awkward. The Vikings missed on a big completion to Mike Wallace up top. That was pretty blatant defensive pass interference. Doesn't get called. It just everything about that went completely the wrong way. And look, kudos to San Francisco. Everybody had them dead and buried the entire offseason because everyone left. That is a completely different team than what took the field last year. And to their credit, they came out and they fought Carlos Hyde with a huge game, 3 touchdowns, over 150 yards, I do believe. And, they did what they needed to do. They went out, they ran the ball, and they controlled the clock, and they won the game. And I don't know who had them winning that game.
Okay, then we must also talk about Philadelphia and Atlanta.
Yeah, well, being a Panthers fan, it was rough because I was absolutely rooting for Philadelphia to win, and that would have that would have meant that the Panthers were the only NFC South team to win that week. But the Atlanta Falcons, they looked a lot tougher than they had recently. That was kind of the buzzword going into last season, was that Mike Smith was going to make them a tougher team, that they were going to be a tougher, and you just never saw that come to fruition. Last night, they looked tough. They got Daniel Quinn from the Seattle Seahawks. The defensive coordinator is now their head coach. And on defense, they were flying around, multiple guys to the ball. They looked like a completely different defense. They spent their first 2 draft picks on the defensive side, but it's about more than just the personnel, because the personnel is different, but you can only change a team so much. That team looked a lot different. They looked a lot tougher. They looked a lot stronger, a lot more physical, and a lot faster. And that's saying something for a coach that just got there, for you to have that kind of cultural change. On Philly's side, it's funny because at the end of the game, when they're trying to make their comeback, it goes, through a guy's hands and, ends up as an interception. They don't go for it on 4th down. So it's really the offense that lets them down. If anything was going to let a Chip Kelly-led team down, you wouldn't think it was going to be the offense. But that's ultimately what ends up biting them in the backside. I think that both teams will be fine. I think Philly will right itself. There's they got a lot of different moving parts going on. Now the running game has to be a bit of a concern.
You
go from the leading rusher, DeMarco Murray, last year with the Cowboys, to 9 yards on the ground. So if you're looking for something that you want to keep an eye on, if you're an Eagles fan, that's got to be the thing that kind of scares you the most. Because as much as we talk about Mariota and all the Dennis Dixon and all the different guys that Chip Kelly had at the quarterback position, and even Nick Foles a couple years ago, it's really about the running game. They always look to attack the opposition running the ball, that they like the tempo and they like to spread you out, because they can then identify where to go and just run you into the ground. 9 yards isn't going to cut it. And I know they have a lot of different guys. They got DeMarco Murray. They got Ryan Matthews. They got Darren Sproles. They have a lot of different guys that they're going to rotate in at that running back position. But regardless of whoever's getting the ball, they've got to be better moving it on the ground.
Well, I guess the powers that be in the ESPN must be a little bit disappointed. They had probably the premier running backs in the NFL on a Monday night, first Monday night, and they both underperformed big time.
I'm sure LaShawn McCoy loved every minute of it. I'm 100% sure they did.
He's all. I think the other, I guess, 2 more games that we can get in right quick. Mm-hmm. I guess first of all, St. Louis and Seattle.
Yeah, now that was a game that I've talked to a lot of people, and they seem to be surprised about it. That intra-divisional games are always tough, and Seattle and St. Louis have battled tooth and nail pretty much the entire time. Yeah. I think that the last 3 or 4 games that they've had have all been decided as one-possession games. That, was the onside kick in overtime a little surprising? Sure, but Pete Carroll's a surprising guy. If we learn nothing else from the Super Bowl, is the fact that Pete Carroll's an absolutely surprising guy. And I don't take too much away from it. It's a tough game. They're going to be tough. The next time they play, it's probably going to be one possession, and it's going to be tough again. So I'd look for more of that moving forward in that NFC West, especially if you're talking about the 49ers being better than people thought as well, because the Rams are a talented team. They have 4 first-rounders on that defensive front. They have a nice little bit of talent on offense with the skill positions. I know Nick Foles is new, but they won that game without their number 1 pick, Todd Gurley. So they've got plenty of talent. If you look at the entire NFC West, that team, that's going to be a tough division for anybody to come out of, whether or not they were representative of the NFC in last year in the Super Bowl or not.
And then also, too, they got stopped in another 4th and 1.
And it's a little surprising that they go to – not that they go to Marshawn Lynch, but you go to him in the shotgun formation, that you go kind of try to – if I'm going to run the ball and I have Marshawn Lynch, I'm going to go ahead and go with my bigger personnel, because I would have that kind of faith in him. And so when you run out of the shotgun, the running back is taking the ball from a standstill position and now has to start making things happen. And look, to their credit, the Rams were really good up front, as everyone knows that they are, whether it's Ogletree or Laurinaitis or Aaron Donald or Long or any of the other guys that they have up there. They were really good up front, beat the guys in front of them, got into the backfield, and forced a negative play when the Seattle Seahawks absolutely needed that 1 yard to keep the game going.
All right, let's close out the games with Dallas and the New York Giants.
Yeah, that was a really weird game. I'm not gonna lie to you. It was back and forth the whole time, and then the whole whatever Eli was thinking at the end. He thought that the Cowboys had an extra timeout that they didn't have. He told Rashard Jennings not to score not once but twice. Then he ends up as he's scrambling away, he throws the ball away, stops everything. He ruined every single thing about that last possession that you could do in the goal line with the lead. You don't usually say that a guy like Eli Manning, who's been in the biggest situations possible, performed poorly in the clutch, but he absolutely did. He completely lost track of apparently every single important metric that you could lose track of. I don't even know what to say to that. It's just surprising. It's weird the entire way through. I know Eli Manning kind of owned up to it, and that's cool. But if you're a Giants fan, I know you're thinking, man, you're a veteran of this game. You've done it at the biggest stages. It's peculiar, but everybody's human, and I guess it kind of just happens. I really have no idea what to say to that. Like, it was just one of the weirdest kind of confluences of circumstances that I've seen at the end of a game.
And Cowboys win without Dez Bryant. They're going to be out. He's going to be out for at least 4 to 6 weeks. But no one talks about Tony Romo and how he just drove that team down.
Yeah, and we talked about this a week ago that I felt like he was going to be the offensive MVP of that NFC East. I thought that I still like Dallas, even though they've suffered some really tough injuries. You mentioned Dez Bryant. Yes. Orlando Scandrick before the season started. Randy Gregory, their rookie that they were so high on at the linebacker, who's known for his pass rushing ability, he's going to be out for about a quarter of the season as well. I think that this team, if they can stay healthy, is going to be the NFC representative. Just because I like what they did on defense, because they get back to Marcus Lawrence, their first round pick from last year, who suffered through injury, because they picked up Randy Gregory, because Greg Hardy comes in the next couple of weeks. Sean Lee, their big time middle linebacker, if he can stay healthy, that would be huge for them, because he's the captain and kind of the quarterback and the hub of that defense. So there's a lot of really, really good talent on that defensive end, which was really their weakest point last year. It was more, hey, defense, just try to hold them a couple times as we continue to get our running game going. I still like them, but they can't suffer any more injuries, because Dez Bryant does he's so big for them, because he's always a matchup problem. That whenever a defense locks him up with man-on-man coverage, it doesn't matter what they've called in the huddle. They feel completely comfortable saying, you know what, let's check out of that. Dez, go up and get us some yards, go up and get us some points. And he's that good. I think he's the best wide receiver in the game. And so whenever you lose a guy like that, you can't replace him with one simple guy. They traded with Oakland today. Yeah, Bryce Butler. Obviously not Dez Bryant. Terrence Williams, I'm sure will get more of a role, and maybe they'll rely more on the running game. But this ultimately, I think it comes down to Tony Romo has to continue to play well and not turn the ball over, not have that big, for lack of a better term, Romo moment where he turns the ball over, makes the big play late in the games. If he can make that next level and take that step up in his maturity as a football player, I think the sky's the limit for these teams.
Good stuff. Well, as we wind down, what games in the NFL are you looking forward to this weekend?
I think it'll be fun. The Pats and the Bills play. And it's probably been a while since anybody highlighted a Patriots versus Buffalo Bills game. But they're going to be playing in Buffalo, and I know it's early, but Buffalo looks so good in their opening game, and so did the Patriots. Look, I know that they ended up only winning by 7 points, versus the Steelers on that opening Thursday night, but they controlled the game for the most part for the entire duration of that contest. I want to see it. I want to see who I think are the two best teams in the AFC East go get it. And not only that, I want to see Tom Brady on the road. Yeah, we got to see, the homecoming about, hey, Deflategate. Hey, we're the Super Bowl champions. Hey, it's so great to be us. Okay. Yeah, and maybe this is a little hatred on my part, but all right, let's go ahead and let's see you play in some unfriendly confines. So that's going to be a really, really fun game to watch. I think the Broncos and Chiefs on Thursday, actually.
Yes, I think that's a game. That'll be a very interesting game because I think outside, since Deflategate is gone, I think the biggest story right now in the NFL is Peyton Manning.
Absolutely. I mean, because he's been one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen. He's clearly in decline. How precipitous that decline is going to be, we're all going to kind of be witnesses at the same time to figure that out. And the Chiefs, I'm sure they're 1-0 as well. I'm sure they're thinking, hey, why not us? We've got a really, really good defense. We've got one of, if not the best running backs in Jamal Charles in the league on our team. We just picked up Jeremy Maclin. I still don't really believe in Alex Smith, but he can make a believer out of me if he's able to win some of these big time games versus the Broncos. They really haven't done that well against their kind of arch nemesis in the AFC West. If he's able to win games like this, maybe he can make a believer out of me and some other folk.
I'm looking at some other games here. Titans versus the Browns. We're going to have Mariota versus Johnny Manziel, probably because the starting quarterback from Cleveland, I think, suffered a concussion. McCown, I think. Yeah,
McCown.
He's probably going to – that will be an interesting game.
Apparently, Mariota only plays Heisman Trophy candidates and winners, so good for him. Look, this will be fun to watch in terms of is Mariota going to be able to repeat that sort of performance against a team that should have a better defense. I was a little disappointed in what the Buccaneers were doing defensively. The Browns should be better defensively. I don't know what to make of Johnny Manziel. It's a little difficult, to be completely honest with you. And I've always liked Johnny Manziel as a football player. It's a little difficult to try to figure out exactly what you have because there's not a ton of talent on those skill positions. They're still missing Josh Gordon, their early draft pick, who was all world when he was able to play, but his off the field stuff has kept him off the field. And so you don't have that kind of those dynamic players that you would really need in order to have a really good feel for how good he is. We talked about Buffalo and this being a really good test for Tyrod Taylor because he has all these weapons. Well, Johnny Manziel doesn't. And so what you're going to ask him to do is kind of, win in spite of. And that's a tough situation for any backup quarterback, regardless of, how popular they are.
Well, I think outside of the Buffalo Bills and Patriots, two marquee games, 4:25 Eastern time Sunday, and then 8:30 Eastern time Sunday night. We've got Cowboys at the Eagles.
Always fun when these NFC East teams get together, man. That's even if they're not the best division, they're certainly the most entertaining. There's always something to talk about, always a storyline to flesh out, and Cowboys and. I mean, it's what you're supposed to look forward to. Again, I'm big on them. The Eagles. I mean, you don't want to go 0-2. You don't want to go down 0-2. And this is the great thing about professional football because it always seems so urgent. You lose the first game, okay. You lose a second game, now you're 0-2. Maybe you fall back 2 games in your division, and your fan base will absolutely panic because you only got 16 games. Yes.
Well, you're talking about Philadelphia's fan base. Could you imagine if they lose that game?
No.
Oh my.
No, I can't.
Oh my.
And with all the stuff about Chip Kelly being a genius, and I'm going to ship out all the more identifiable guys that my fan base really, really likes. Okay, you start losing. You see, let's check that genius at the door when you start losing because they're not silly brotherly love. Sure, we'll see.
Absolutely. And then finally, I think a bigger game for one team than the other, the Seahawks at the Packers.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to fall down 0-2, especially in their division with the NFC West looking like it's going to be even stronger than some had anticipated. And it's the rematch. It's the rematch in the NFC Championship game. the Packers had Seattle dead to rights and let them up off the pavement. They had some fluky things happen. Sure, the dropped onside kick recovery, the obscene amount of points that they scored in a very little period of time, the heartbreaking way that they lose in overtime with a perfect pass from Russell Wilson. This is going to be a lot of fun because the Green Bay, I'm sure, still has an axe to grind, and the Seattle absolutely doesn't want to back itself up any more than it absolutely has to. It'll also be interesting. You know, there hasn't been any news to my knowledge on the whole Cam Chancellor front. I mean,
nothing. You know, nothing.
Seattle looked different. You know, you never want to point to one guy for a team as talented as Seattle is and say, hey, he's the reason they're not winning. He's the reason they're not as good defensively, but he might be the reason they're not as good defensively. So, you know, it's costing him money, and it might be costing Seattle games. I don't know who blinks first.
Well, interesting too. His replacement got burned a few times in that game that they played against St. Louis, and I think it's interesting. We have a neutralizer. Cam Chancellor's not playing, and Jordy Nelson is out.
Right. Yes. Absolutely. Jordy Nelson's out. They were able to pick up James Jones. He looked pretty good, and then
he did
in their game, which was a little surprising because he was just out on the waiver wire, and that. I don't know if this is really just indicative of exactly how good Aaron Rodgers is. You know, you can make the case, you know, over his last 2 or 3 years that these are some of the most productive, efficient seasons that we've had for a quarterback in the history of the NFL. He's just been so dynamic. He's not turning the ball over. He's throwing a ton of touchdowns, the yards. And then you add to that the fact they have a running back like Eddie Lacy.
Yeah,
it seems unfair sometimes. So, I mean, it's beautiful to have this as an early game, early in the season as a highlight game. Everyone's going to be tuned in to watch it. I mean, I'm hoping that Russ is able to pull it out because I'm a huge fan. But I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it.
Good stuff. Well, to recap, we covered NCAA, covered NFL. As always, Brendan, any last words before we sign off?
I'm just really, really enjoying it. Well, I guess I got to at least give a little shout out to Floyd Mayweather. I'm not sure. No one's really 100% sure if he's really 100% done this time, but 49-0, you can say a lot of things about his personality, how brash he is, some of the things he's done outside of the boxing ring that you don't agree with, and you would absolutely have a right to do so. But you can't take away exactly how dynamic he's been as a boxer. The name of the game, as he's often a fan of saying, is to hit and not be hit. And no one has done that better than he has. So kudos to him. 49-0 becomes only the second American to retire with undefeated record as a champion to Rocky Marciano. So kudos to him.
One last thing: does Serena come back?
Man, oh man, we talked about this offline. 100%. One, I blame Drake. And then two, I think she does. I mean, I think she's so dynamic, and it's easy to look at kind of the last time that she's going to be featured nationally on TV, and it's a loss, and to kind of come out with a sour taste in your mouth. But three Grand Slam wins in one season is absolutely phenomenal. She had already won the 4 in a row, just had failed to do it in the calendar year, but. One of my favorite athletes ever, male, female, doesn't matter. And one of the more dominant performances we've seen out of anybody in a long time. Next year she goes, I know it was all about, finding the Grand Slam all 4 in one calendar year, but she goes to tie the all-time leading record for women's Grand Slam wins in the Open era. So that's going to be another storyline that gets fleshed out at the beginning of next tennis season. So so I'm looking forward to that. She'll be back.
All right. Where can people touch base with you?
You can catch me on Twitter at WBHUalum. That's at WBHUALUM. You can also catch me on my podcast, which is available on Podomatic and iTunes and the WRAL Sports Fan app, called He's the Producer, I'm the Host. That's He's the Producer, I'm the Host. You can also catch me from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. At www.thesportshopradio.com. Just click listen, or if you're in the Raleigh-Durham area, 99.3, 96.5, and 620 AM.
All right, I'm Dr. Vibe, host and producer of The Sports Vibe, host and producer of Do You Know What Time It Is on Sunday nights, most Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and also, host and co-producer of the Good Men Project show on the once a month at thegoodmenproject.com. And believe it or not, there is another new show coming, but we will keep you in suspense on that. As always, I like to say you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles and you're a solution for someone's problem. Again, if you want to touch base with me, probably the best way is at Twitter at DrVibeshow and via email dr.vibeshow at thedrvibeshow.com. As always, God bless, peace be well, keep the faith, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.